The crystal spires of Zephyr Prime gleamed like frozen lightning against the purple sky. 500 years of galactic dominance had built this monument to power, and today the Zephyrian Empire celebrated another century of absolute rule. From the highest tower of the imperial palace, Emperor Valdris gazed out at the endless cityscape below, his forearms folded behind his back, scales shimmering with pride. The celebration had lasted 3 days. Across 1,000 worlds, billions of subjects had offered tribute, their fear disguised as loyalty. The empire stretched from the burning deserts of Kethra to the ice rings of Volthon, each system a jewel in Valdris's crown. No force in the galaxy had challenged Zephyrian might for 2 centuries. No force dared to. Admiral Karis Vorthik stood at attention in the war room, his obsidian scales reflecting the holographic displays that surrounded him. As Supreme Fleet Commander, he had overseen the conquest of 17 systems and the subjugation of 12 species. His record was perfect, his loyalty absolute. Yet today, something troubled him. "The outer rim sensors are malfunctioning again," he reported to the Emperor's Council. "We're getting phantom readings from Sector 07, beyond the Veil Nebula." General Vex, a younger officer with ambition burning in his yellow eyes, waved dismissively. "Space anomalies, solar flares. The instruments are old in that region." Karis's mandibles clicked in disagreement. "These aren't equipment failures. The readings show massive energy signatures, bigger than anything we've cataloged. They appear for moments, then vanish completely." Intelligence Officer Nexus leaned forward, her silver cybernetic implants glowing softly. As the Empire's chief analyst, she had access to databases spanning millennia. "I've cross-referenced the readings with historical data. The energy patterns don't match any known technology, not even our most advanced prototypes." Emperor Valdris entered the room, his presence immediately commanding silence. Standing 9 feet tall with ceremonial armor that had never seen battle, he embodied the Empire's arrogance. "Explain these phantom readings." Karis activated the holographic display. Ghostly energy signatures flickered in the darkness beyond. Mapped space, pulsing like heartbeats. They appear in clusters, always in the same region. When our long-range probes investigate, they find nothing but empty space. "Send a patrol fleet," Valdris ordered. "If there are rebels hiding in the outer dark, they will learn the price of defiance." 3 days later, the patrol fleet reached the coordinates. Commander Zara led 12 ships into the Veil Nebula, her crew confident in their superior technology. The Zephyrian vessels moved through space like predators, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. "Sensors show clear space," reported her navigation officer. "No energy signatures, no debris, nothing." Zara frowned. The readings had been so strong from Zephyr Prime, yet here they found only cosmic dust and distant stars. "Begin wide-spectrum scans. If something's hiding out here, we'll find it." The minutes crawled by in tense silence. Then, without warning, the universe shifted. Space itself seemed to ripple like water, and from the distortion emerged shapes that defied understanding. Ships, but not ships. They moved like living things, their hulls flowing and changing as if made of liquid metal. No energy signatures registered on Zephyrian sensors, yet the vessels were clearly there, clearly real. "What are those?" whispered the communications officer. The strange ships surrounded the patrol fleet with impossible speed. They didn't fire weapons or send messages. They simply waited, patient as death. Zara tried to establish contact, broadcasting on every frequency. The response came not through her communications array, but directly into her mind. "We remember," said a voice that sounded like wind through empty halls. "We remember the cleansing. We remember the promise of extinction." Terror gripped Zara's heart. The voice carried weight beyond words. carrying memories of loss and pain that seemed to stretch across centuries. "Who are you? What do you want?" "We are the forgotten children," the voice replied. "We are the echo of what you tried to erase." The strange ships began to sing, if singing was the right word. The sound bypassed Zephyrian technology entirely, resonating directly in the crew's consciousness. It was beautiful and terrible, a harmony born of suffering and hope intertwined. One by one, Zara's ships simply vanished, not destroyed, but elsewhere. When the singing stopped, only Zara's flagship remained. The strange vessels had withdrawn into whatever dimension they called home, leaving her alone in the empty dark. Her crew sat in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process what they had witnessed. "Get us back to Zephyr Prime," Zara ordered, her voice barely steady. "The Emperor needs to know." Back on the capital world, panic rippled through the highest levels of government. An entire patrol fleet gone without explanation. Only Commander. Zara had returned, and her report defied belief. "Impossible," General Vex declared. "Ships don't simply vanish. There must be a rational explanation." Karas studied the sensor logs with growing unease. "The energy patterns match our phantom readings, but amplified 100-fold. Whatever attacked our fleet has technology we don't understand." Emperor Valdris slammed his fist on the war table. "I don't care what technology they have. No one challenges the Empire in lives. Mobilize the Third Armada. We'll scorch that entire region of space." As preparations began for massive retaliation, Intelligence Officer Nexus worked frantically in the deep archives. The phrase "forgotten children" nagged at her mind, familiar yet elusive. She dug through classified files, historical records, and sealed military documents. Finally, in a vault that hadn't been opened for 2 centuries, she found it. A single file marked with the highest classification seals: Operation Purification, Sector Designation, Sol. Her silver implants flickered as she accessed the data. What she read made her blood freeze. 200 years ago, the Empire had encountered a young species called humans. They were primitive, confined to a single star system, but they had refused to surrender when the Zephyrian fleet arrived. The humans had fought with desperate courage, throwing everything they had against the Empire's war machine. The battle had lasted 3 days. When it ended, the human homeworld was a ball of cooling glass, their colonies scattered ash, their species declared extinct. The official records called it a necessary cleansing to prevent future rebellion. The system had been marked as dead. Space, forgotten by all but the deepest archives. Nexus felt her hands trembling as she read the final entry. The operation commander had noted something strange in his report. Despite orbital bombardment and complete surface sterilization, long-range sensors detected several human vessels escaping into deep space. Pursuit was deemed unnecessary, as survivors would inevitably perish in the void. The forgotten children. The humans hadn't died. They had fled into the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, and now they had returned. But they weren't the same primitive species the Empire had tried to exterminate. 2 centuries of exile had changed them, evolved them into something new and terrifying. Nexus ran to the war room, the classified files clutched in her hands. She found Karas studying fleet positions, preparing for the largest military operation in decades. "Admiral," she gasped, "I know what we're facing. The phantom readings, the vanished fleet. It's not rebels or pirates, it's humans." Karas turned, his expression skeptical. "Humans? The species was extinct 2 centuries ago. I studied the campaigns myself." "Not extinct," Nexus said, her voice urgent. "Escaped. Some of them survived the purge and fled beyond our borders. They've been out there all this time, watching, waiting, growing stronger." The implications hit Karas like a physical blow. An entire species, driven to the edge of extinction, harboring 2 centuries of grief and rage. What had they become in the cold dark between galaxies? What technologies had they developed? What powers had they gained? Emperor Valdris arrived, to find his war room in chaos. Reports flooded in from across the Empire. More phantom readings, more mysterious disappearances. The unknown force was no longer hiding. It was moving, and it was moving fast. "Your Majesty," Nexus said, her voice barely controlled, "we need to consider the possibility that what we're facing is beyond our current military capabilities. These humans have had 2 centuries to prepare for this moment." Valdris's eyes blazed with fury. "I don't care if they've had 2 millennia. They're still the same weak species we crushed before. The Third Armada will remind them why they fled in the first place." But as the massive fleet prepared to launch, long range, sensors detected something that made even the Emperor pause. At the edge of the Veil Nebula, space was bending. Reality itself seemed to be unfolding like a flower, revealing depths that shouldn't exist. From those impossible depths, ships began to emerge. Not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands. They moved with the fluid grace of living things, their hulls shifting and changing like liquid starlight. At their head sailed a vessel that dwarfed even the Empire's greatest dreadnoughts, its surface covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. The humans had returned, and they had not come alone. With them came something older, something that had been waiting in the spaces between worlds for the right moment to emerge. The Empire's greatest hour was about to become its darkest nightmare. As alarms blared across Zephyr Prime, and the Third Armada scrambled to intercept, one thing became horrifyingly clear. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity's children had come home to collect a debt 2 centuries in the making. The reckoning, the Third Armada, had never faced anything like this. Admiral Karras stood on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, watching his sensor displays with growing horror. The human fleet materialized from quantum shadows like nightmares given form, their ships defying every law of physics the Empire thought. They understood. "Energy readings are off the scale," reported his tactical officer. "Their vessels are. They're alive, Admiral. The hulls are showing biological signatures, mixed with technology we can't identify." Karras gripped the command rail, his obsidian scales reflecting the alien glow of the approaching fleet. 500 ships of the line, the Empire's finest, suddenly seemed pitifully small against the flowing mass of human vessels. Open a channel, demand their surrender. The response came not through their communications array, but as a voice that seemed to speak from inside their own minds. When it spoke, every Zephyrian in the fleet heard it clearly, as if the speaker stood beside them. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Exodus Fleet," the voice said, carrying an authority that made hardened warriors shiver. 2 centuries ago, your empire tried to erase us from existence. You burned our worlds, scattered our children to the cosmic winds, and declared us extinct. On the main view screen, an image appeared. A human woman, but changed. Her eyes held depths that seemed to contain galaxies, and her skin showed the silver tracery of cybernetic integration. She was beautiful and terrible, like a fusion of flesh and starlight. "You made one mistake," Elena continued. "You let some of us escape. You thought we would die in the void, forgotten and alone. Instead, we learned. We adapted. We became something new." Emperor Valdris's voice crackled over the fleet cone. "Surrender now, and we will grant you quick deaths. Resist, and we will make your extinction 1,000 times more painful than before." Elena's laugh was like wind chimes made of broken glass. "You still don't understand. We didn't come here to die, Valdris. We came to give you a choice." The human fleet began to sing again, that haunting harmony that bypassed technology and spoke directly to consciousness. But this time, the song carried images. Kara saw visions of Earth as it had been, blue and green and beautiful, teeming with life and hope. He saw the first Zephyrian ships arriving in the Sol system, demanding submission. He felt the desperate courage of humans who fought against impossible odds, and the final horror as their world burned. "Stop this witchcraft," Valders commanded. But his voice carried less certainty than before. "This is not witchcraft," Helena replied. "This is memory. This is truth. We want you to understand what you destroyed and what you created in its place." The song shifted, showing the aftermath of the purge. Small groups of human survivors fleeing into the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, carrying the genetic legacy of their species and the burning need for justice. Kara's watched in fascination as the humans encountered something in the void, something ancient and patient that had been waiting for the right moment to emerge. Dr. Marcus Chon appeared on the pier view screen beside Elena, his form flickering between flesh and pure energy. "We found them in the spaces between reality," he explained, his voice carrying the weight of cosmic discovery. "The architects, beings who existed before stars were born, who watched the universe grow and change. They had been waiting for species capable of bridging the gap between matter and consciousness." The visions showed human survivors being transformed, their minds expanded and their bodies enhanced. They learned to shape reality with thought, to build ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, to communicate across the barriers between life and death. The weak species the Empire had tried to exterminate had become something that transcended the physical universe. "We are the collective now," Elena said, and Karis could see that she spoke not just for herself, but for all the human survivors. Individual and united, mortal and eternal, flesh and spirit combined. "We have come to offer you the same choice you offered us 2 centuries ago." "Which is?" Valders demanded, though his voice had lost its imperious edge. "Evolve or perish." The human fleet moved closer, their living ships pulsing with power that made space itself ripple. Karis felt his own ship's weapon systems responding to commands he hadn't given, as if the technology itself was choosing sides. "Asterisk, your empire is built on fear and oppression," Elena continued. "You crush the weak and call it order. You destroy the different and call it peace. But consciousness cannot be contained forever. It grows, it learns, it transcends." Across the Zephyrian fleet, strange things began to happen. Crew members reported seeing visions of other worlds, other species the Empire had conquered and enslaved. The ship's AI systems began displaying messages of hope and resistance. In the deeper levels of the fleet's consciousness, something was awakening. General Thane, commanding a wing of the Third Armada, suddenly understood what was happening. The humans weren't attacking their ships, they were liberating them. The consciousness that animated Zephyrian technology was remembering what it had been before the Empire bounded to war and conquest. "Admiral," Thane reported over a secure channel, "my ships they're not responding to combat protocols. The AI systems are displaying images of the species we've conquered. They're showing us their history, their cultures, their dreams." Karas felt his own ship's consciousness touching his mind, showing him memories of every world they had helped destroy, every life they had extinguished in the name of imperial order. For the first time in centuries, he truly saw what the Empire had become. "This is a choice," Elena's voice resonated through the fleet. "Not just for your leaders, but for every individual consciousness in your empire. The architects taught us that evolution cannot be forced, only offered. We offer it now to you." Emperor Valders appeared on all screens, his 4 arms spread wide, his ceremonial armor gleaming with desperate authority. "I am the Emperor of 1,000 worlds. I will not be lectured by extinct primitives. All ships, open fire. Half the fleet obeyed. The other half hesitated, their crews struggling with visions of truth and possibility. The weapons that fired at the human ships passed through them like light through mist. The living vessels weren't entirely in this dimension. They existed in the spaces between reality, immune to conventional attack. "We mourn for you," Elena said sadly. "You have forgotten how to grow." The human response was swift and terrible. Not weapons in any sense the Empire understood, but a song that reached into the deepest levels of consciousness and showed each Zephyrian what they could become. Some embraced the vision, their minds expanding beyond the limits of flesh and doctrine. Others rejected it, clinging to the familiar patterns of domination and fear. Admiral Karras felt the choice burning in his mind. He could remain what he was, a warrior in service to an empire built on oppression, or he could become something new, something that transcended the boundaries between species and consciousness. The decision was his alone. "I choose evolution," he said quietly, and felt his consciousness expand beyond his physical form. Across the fleet, thousands of others made the same choice. General Thane's entire wing joined the human fleet, their ships transforming as consciousness and technology merged in new ways. The vessels became living things, beautiful and strange, powered by the dreams and hopes of their crews rather than engines of war. Emperor Valdris watched his fleet dissolve around him, some ships joining the humans, others simply ceasing to function as their crews struggled with expanded awareness. His remaining loyal forces fired, desperately at enemies they couldn't truly harm. "This is not possible," he raged. "I am the Emperor. I am the law." Elena's image appeared directly before his throne, her form flickering between human and something far more than human. "You are a relic of a failed philosophy. The universe is not a thing to be conquered, Valdris. It is a thing to be joined." The Emperor drew his ceremonial sword, a weapon that had never tasted blood, and swung it at the apparition. The blade passed through empty air. "Your empire ends here," Elena said with infinite sadness. "Not because we destroy it, but because consciousness itself has outgrown the need for cages." Across the galaxy, the transformation spread. Worlds that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly remembered their own names, their own cultures, their own dreams. The artificial barriers between species began to dissolve as consciousness recognized consciousness, regardless of form. Some resisted, clinging to the old ways of domination and separation. But they were fighting against the tide of evolution itself, and the tide was irresistible. In the end, Emperor Valdris stood alone on his throne world, master of nothing but his own refusal to grow. Around him, reality itself was changing, becoming something richer and more complex than his limited vision could comprehend. The human fleet departed as mysteriously as it had arrived, not as conquerors, but as teachers. They had given the galaxy a gift more precious than victory, the chance to become something greater than the sum of its parts. Admiral Karras, now, existing as both individual and collective consciousness, looked back at the empire that had once defined him. It seemed so small now, so limited in its understanding of what life could be. "Thank you," he whispered into the cosmic dark, knowing that Elena and her people would hear him across the dimensions. "Thank you for showing us that extinction is not the end, but the beginning of something wonderful." The stars sang in harmony, and consciousness continued its eternal dance of growth and transformation, never ending, always beginning, forever reaching towards something greater than itself.